worst animal nightmare be this: a terrifying snake attack that keeps invading your dreams long after the most frightening night of your life. It's cold, dark, stormy, and you're sharing your bed with a deadly snake. A recurring nightmare so real that Daniel Blair relives every horrifying detail of that night all alone on a remote island beach, and the shock of snake bites to his head, face, and neck. Or could your worst animal nightmare be this: the feeling of panic as you slip on a river crossing into deeper water, and your desperate struggle to survive in crocodile territory.
Dad, there's a crocodile!
For Kerry McLaughlin, this tragic battle was to be his son's worst animal nightmare. Morton Island is just offshore from one of Australia's major cities. So close, yet so isolated by wilderness that it's really another world. It is one of Australia's great sand islands, a spectacular national park with pristine beaches stretching out of sight into the mist of breaking waves. Isolation and solitude are cherished qualities of this subtropical paradise, enjoyed by the few lucky inhabitants of two small hidden fishing communities and a faithful following of weekend regulars and holiday campers. Landing barges connect them to the mainland, and most of the driving is done on the beach, tides and weather permitting. Morton Island has the world's tallest permanent sandhills and one large rocky outcrop with a lighthouse built in colonial days. The Cape Morton Lighthouse was a maritime lifesaver for 150 years and was about to become the focal point in another life or death struggle. Daniel Blair was a surfing addict. Morton Island was one of those rare gems, beaches where you have the waves to yourself, and Daniel could see the island from his mainland home.
I've surfed since I was 19. I lived on the sunny coast for, say, 10 years. I was living on the beachfront there, and I thought there has to be good surf over there somewhere. It was just a matter of a barge ride over there, you know. I just thought one day I'll go over. I got up early because I had to catch an early barge. I just put a fishing rod, a spear gun, some flippers, a snorkel and stuff like that, a little gas stove with some 2-minute noodles, some cordial into a board bag.
On his way out the door, Daniel knew he'd forgotten something: his cell phone. Luckily, he'd taken the trouble to make sure it was fully charged. This one stroke of luck was about to play a critical role in Daniel's island nightmare.
As I was walking out the front, the lady that lived in the house out the front, she just said, where are you going? Do you want a lift?
Jump on in, I'll give you a lift.
Real, thanks.
So she ran me up to the ferry.
The barge is the island's lifeline, carrying vehicles, cargo, and passengers.
I'd been hitting people up on the barge to see if they were going to the other side of the island, because, I mean, the surf is not on this side where the barge lands, and the island's like 8 k's wide, and there's no way I could walk. And no one was going that way, you know.
The island has a unique ecosystem, but many mainland species thrive in this environment, including deadly snakes like the eastern brown. It's the second most venomous reptile in the world, known for its lightning-fast strikes and lethal multiple bites. Pythons are also common. They're non-venomous and rarely attack humans, except in unusual circumstances. If they can't eat you, they're not interested. But if they do bite, it's like being clamped by a mouthful of fish hooks. There's also another deadly species.
Death adders, they will rely on their camouflage. They're very cryptic. They dig themselves down in the leaf litter, so they adopt a wait-and-see approach. If you tread on it, if you're moving your hands through the leaf litter, if you disturb it, that will usually result in a rapid strike, and often more than one. They've got long fangs for their size, around about 1 centimetre in length, and I guess you could compare them. They're kind of the Australian equivalent to a pit viper, like a rattlesnake. They were one of the most feared snakes. If you go back 50 or 100 years, there was a 50% mortality from death adder bites. So a terrifying snake.
And stepping ashore is Daniel Blair with only the vaguest of ideas about where his adventure will lead him.
So when I got off, the guy on the barge said, just keep your eye out for some locals. They'll probably take you over there.
Oh, hang around here. There's heaps of cars heading out there. You'll get a lift for sure.
Cool, thanks, mate.
Too easy. Have a good day.
People look after each other on the island. They pitch in to help during emergencies. It can mean the difference between life and death.
It took me probably half an hour. I sat on the beach and just kept asking everyone if there's anyone going that way.
Daniel Blair was about to hitch a ride into his own personal hell.
Hey, mate, where you heading?
Surfing.
Jump in.
And this guy pulled up and he said, look, I can tell you where a really good surfing spot is. And I said, that'd be perfect.
This is exactly what Daniel had dreamed would happen.
Best surf on the island's up north. Up north, this place called Boulders. I can drop you off.
Really, it's not too far out of your way, is it?
All good.
One of the few tracks on the island leads further and further away from civilization and life support.
So he took me. I gave him $10 petrol.
The road didn't go all the way to the beach.
It's on the northern part of the island. He said, well, you can surf here, and it's like a point break type thing, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, he dropped me off at the top of track. I got out and walked down.
Daniel set off on a 20-minute walk to Boulders, a secluded, private beach that was out of bounds to campers because of its very isolation. As he arrived, he saw the lighthouse, never thinking for a moment he would be fighting for his life, clawing at its steep slopes. Daniel planned on staying 2 nights. He had no idea how he'd get back, relying more on his good fortune of finding a ride. But as he arrived at the beach, he was amazed to discover someone else was already there.
There was a guy and his son. They come over on a jet ski. As I went out, they were coming in and packing up their stuff.
How's the day going, all right?
Oh, mate, it's been bad, but it's not too bad.
Thanks, mate.
At last, Daniel had his dream, his own personal surf beach.
I think I had something to eat, drink, and I sat down and, I got used to the place.
This was going to be his campsite for the next 2 days. He enjoyed a late lunch, not knowing he would be sharing his sleeping bag with a snake in the frightening hours ahead.
As you're sitting there, you can see like the waves coming through, it's just absolutely perfect. And then, I went out surfing.
The surf gets much better than this, but more importantly to Daniel, it was his to enjoy all on his own.
Surfed for a good few hours, and it's getting late afternoon, and I fished for half an hour. And I caught 2 bream. It was perfect until night time.
An ominous storm front was building, something that would get snakes on the move.
Typically a death adder is nocturnally active. It'll spend most of the day concealed, and they will move usually of an evening. So most of their activity is at night.
Daniel was concerned only with cooking and eating the fish he'd just caught. No thought at all of the hazards of a storm or needing shelter from the rain. No thought at all of snakes as he collected wood for a fire.
It was dark, it was probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock. I lit a fire. I was tired too because I've been surfing for so long. I curled up sort of just around from the fire looking out towards the ocean.
Oblivious to the danger, he was enjoying one of the best days of his life.
To me, you've got all the right ingredients for a death adder to be moving. You've got a warm night, you've had some rain, it's humid.
The reality of dangers of the wilderness was completely lost on Daniel. To him, it was just an amazing day at an amazing place.
There's plenty of stories of snakes going through campsites, winding up in the wrong place.
The temperature dropped sharply as the storm front approached, and soon the fire would be gone as well.
It was perfectly clear when I went to bed, and it started raining. I thought, it's just going to be a light shower, so I couldn't do anything. I was in the board bag and I thought, well, hopefully I won't get wet in here. But what happened was the board bag, it's got stitching, like cotton stitching along the side, and that absorbed the water. And I had a shirt on, The shirt was pushing against the cotton, and the cotton was absorbing the water. Then it was going into my shirt, and my shirt was getting saturated. Eventually the water started dribbling into the bag.
All Daniel had was a surfboard bag, certainly not designed for sleeping in the rain.
I had a pool under my back, but I was laying like that. Then I turned the board bag around so that any water would kind of run off the front of it, so I wasn't like, you know, sitting there getting filled up with water. So I was kind of facing down. It didn't do any good, and it got heavier, and probably for a good 4 or 5 hours. Then I fell back to sleep.
Rain usually brings out the insects and the frogs. The environment comes to life, and the snakes follow on with that. Once the rain gets to a point, it becomes uncomfortable for a snake. A light rain's nice, but a heavy downpour, well, that's just, you know, that's like hailstones on the head to them. So once it gets like that, most snakes will go to ground. A sleeping bag is a warm place, and snakes will respond to that. Say it encounters an open sleeping bag, what it encounters is humidity and warmth. That is the ideal place where it could find a frog.
That's exactly where the snake went. Daniel was finally in a deep sleep and didn't feel a thing until he moved. The snake reacted defensively.
Just whack on the head, like that. Whack, just a big smack. Within seconds, it just ripped it off. I thought, no way, this is like a deadly snake. And I'm just thinking, this snake's here somewhere, and it's going to bite me again. I just knew it was a death adder. It was like a foot long, and it was like as thick as my wrist.
There's a pain around the bite site, usually a burning sensation and some mild swelling.
He'd taken 3 fast hits: head, face, and neck.
I just started really panicking. When I was running around the campsite, I'm thinking, what do? I sit here and die? Or do I run? And I'm trying to ruffle around in the dark, and I knew where my phone was. I knew I'm going to need the phone if I managed to make it.
If you've been bitten by a death adder, a snake that is notorious for paralysis, and you run, climb, jog, generally panic, you don't apply any first aid measures, you've then left yourself wide open for a premature death.
Daniel's in serious trouble, miles from the nearest village.
I had no torch at that stage. My only light was from the phone. All I could see was this, like in the clouds, like this. And I thought, I've got to get to this lighthouse.
But reaching the top was not going to solve his problem.
I thought I was going to die halfway up the sand dune. I didn't want to die. That's all I was thinking. I thought, I don't want to die. At one stage I crawled the last 30 metres, I fell down. And I smacked the phone into the sand. So then I cleaned the phone off and I wrapped it in the towel. And it was already wet because it was raining, you know. I'm thinking, how long is this going to last? Am I going to get up there?
All that kept him going was the gripping fear of death.
I just like scampered, you know what I mean, until I got to the top. My main thing was to get up there, and because I thought they had houses up there, I was at the top and I could make out the buildings in the distance, and it was raining pretty hard then.
Daniel knows his only hope of surviving a death adder bite is for the lighthouse keeper to give first aid and raise the alarm.
I bashed on the door and it sounded all hollow inside, like you could just hear it echoing through the house, and I thought, this is not good. And I bashed again.
What Daniel didn't know was the lighthouse was fully automated. The last lighthouse keeper left years ago.
When I knocked on the houses and no one answered, it got worse. Like really worse. I was thinking the houses got to have people in them. They didn't have people in them at all. The whole time I was still thinking I was going to die, I thought I was going to get paralysed because I didn't know what a death adder does.
45 minutes after being bitten, he had one last chance.
Then I started pressing 000 and trying to get service or looking for service.
Come on! Come on!
I got one bar by holding it up. And I held it down and I still had the bar and I got through to them.
With his cell phone connection hanging by a thread, Daniel got through to the local equivalent of the 911 emergency number.
I've been bitten
Bro, Death Adder, please, please come and get me. Bring a chopper, send one now, I'm at the lighthouse.
And then it cut out,
Hello? Hello?
and I was just going,
No! Damn it!
I didn't get a confirmation either. And then I thought, well, okay, they've got my call. They're going to send one. It's going to come. So I went and sat on the steps of one of the houses. But the whole time then, I just was so scared of snakes.
Daniel's worst animal nightmare was embedded deep into his consciousness.
And I was freezing by that stage. It was really cold because I was saturated.
His intense climb to reach the lighthouse could have also pumped venom to every part of his body.
And I got really thirsty because I'd run so far. I had to get a drink of water. So I looked for a tap around the houses, and then there were these two water tanks joined together, and I thought there's got to be a tap here, and there was. And I drank heaps of water, which helped.
Finding the water tanks did more than quench his thirst.
I just, for some reason, thought I'll just try it here, and I flipped it.
Come on.
And I had 3 bars.
Yes, come on.
Whammo, I rang him straight back.
The signal held, but Daniel's first call had registered, and a rescue mission was swinging into action. But fear of the unknown and paranoia over snakes were taking their toll.
Then they said, can you find your way to the helipad?
Helipad?
And I said, no, absolute no way.
I know where it is.
I said, I'm just sitting at the bottom of the lighthouse, okay? I said, I've got no torch, I'm not going into the bush again. I'm not going anywhere, I'm not going to get lost, I'm not going to fall down dead in the bush.
It's a 15-minute dash to the island by chopper, but not an easy place to land with raging air currents around a headland gripped in torrential rain.
It was a very difficult job in terms of reach the patient. It was a terrible night. It was dark, it was stormy and windy as well.
Dr. Julio and the emergency crew were putting their lives on the line.
I went back around to sit on the stairs to try and get out of some of the rain, and it seemed like forever. Then I hear a helicopter.
For Daniel, the terrible ordeal was nearly over.
Over here!
The weather was against him. Strong winds buffet the aircraft, and heavy rain severely limits the pilot's visibility. A landing in these conditions on this headland is impossible.
The first attempt to land was aborted.
The probability of a crash was high. The pilot made the decision not to jeopardize the lives of the 4 aircrew in an effort to save one. In his agitated state and certain he would die, Daniel couldn't comprehend.
It just kept going, straight over the lighthouse and out over to the water. And I went, I just going, maybe it's not it.
Once again, Daniel called the emergency number, terrified he was on borrowed time. It was almost 2 hours since the snake struck 3 times to his head, face, and neck. All alone, he is now facing medical symptoms compounded by his panicked state of mind.
Please.
And then I gave up on it.
The last glimmer of hope had gone. Rescue now impossible.
I just went, this is it.
But emergency services had a backup. As the chopper was returning, a National Park Ranger was taking over.
I would have received a pager call sort of late night, early morning from the ambulance, notifying me that there'd been a snakebite victim which they needed to attend.
Seeing headlights flashing through the rain meant salvation.
And then I saw these 2 headlights.
Hey! Hey!
And I just ran down the hill as fast as I could.
Hey! Hey!
Upon sort of arriving to that area, I came across Daniel, who it seemed had multiple snake bites around his face, and he was in quite a distressed state. Daniel was quite concerned, thought he was going to die.
The ranger could see the marks. There was no doubt Daniel had multiple snake bites.
Okay, mate, all right. Let's have a look at it. Just calm down. Okay.
Where's the chopper?
Mate, I think it's a python. I think you're going to be all right.
First thing he said, oh, it looks like a carpet snake bite. And I said, mate, it's not a carpet snake bite, dude. I said, bit me 3 times in like 2 seconds.
Daniel has a reptile handler's license. He's sure it was a death adder.
An ambulance is on its way. They're going to look at you.
The only medical help available, and a slim last lifeline, was the volunteer ambulance service and the island nurse, June Jones.
On Moreton, when it's raining, you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's so dark. And I'm out the window with the rain coming in and with a torch.
With bites to the head, there's not much the ground help can do. But then, good news. The ambulance was in radio contact with the rescue chopper. Conditions were marginally better. The rain around the headland was easing, slightly.
We were on our way back. The weather improved a little bit and the pilot decided to give another go.
The pilot heroically turns the chopper around and heads back to the lighthouse. And air rescue is now Daniel's only hope.
He only had his shorts on and sopping wet, so I dried him off, and all we could do was put a big blanket around him to warm him up. He was shivering and he was just in shock.
Daniel was still in fear for his life, until suddenly, through the rain, came his best chance for survival.
Then the pilot very slowly managed to land there.
Guided by lights from the ambulance and ranger, it was still a dangerous operation, but worth the risk for a critical snakebite victim.
That was the best thing I've ever seen in my life, you know.
Daniel finally tells his story to a doctor, confident that he now has a chance to survive. Dr. Julio is well equipped to deal with snakebite.
At that moment I was just relieved as well, because I knew that even if the helicopter cannot take off again, we were there, we have equipment, and even in the worst situation in which he could be paralyzed because of the venom, we could assist him.
Daniel was still in an agitated state of panic, making it difficult for Dr. Julio to assess his symptoms.
I started getting like tight breath. I just couldn't breathe properly.
Just take a breath. Okay. That's all right.
Put things all over my body.
Okay.
They put needles in each arm.
Before takeoff, they make sure drip feeds are in place, equipment is secure, and the patient is ready for flight.
Are you feeling better now, Daniel? Very good. You are doing very well, okay?
At that stage I thought, you know, I'm saved, you know, I'm alive, I'm going to live.
He's now just minutes away from the hospital. Without the chopper, it would be hours of life-threatening time by SUV, boat, and ambulance.
That's the thing with Moreton Island. It's a very remote place. It might be close to Brisbane, but to actually get some emergency hospital attention, we rely heavily on those helicopters, medevac helicopters.
As the rescue chopper approaches the helipad, hospital staff are waiting for Daniel. Details of his condition have been radioed in, and a full medical team is standing by with all the right equipment for tests and treatment.
When I got to the hospital, I thought this isn't over yet. I was scared. Really scared then, you know, still.
There's a protocol for snakebite victims. They swab the bites for signs of venom, though the rain would have washed most of it off Daniel's face and neck. They take blood and urine to test for particular venoms, so they know what anti-venom to use.
With a lot of snake bites, you can get some paralysis sometimes. So we also assess to see if he's got any trouble breathing or drooling or any weakness. That gives us an indication if there has been any envenomation.
Daniel is still showing symptoms that could be from venom or just the shock to his system.
Daniel's bites did look like they were fangs. The two puncture marks were quite distinct.
And how long ago did this happen?
More than 2 hours after the event, Daniel is not showing any life-threatening signs.
There was just a once-off test done in the urine and the venom detection kit. Neither of those demonstrated any evidence of envenomation.
Daniel was right to worry. Snakes can bite without injecting venom, but you won't know until it's too late.
So in some cases the snake may not actually get the fangs in, they may glance off. It may be in the process of replacing its fangs. They break fangs on a fairly regular basis. They bite a prey, it runs off and breaks off a fang, they drop new ones down. So there could be a number of factors for a snake not envenomating someone. When I consider all the facts that we've got out of this scenario here, my bet would be that in this case it would have been a python, a small to medium-sized python, probably more common than death adders on the island.
We've had a few involving snakes, and pythons particularly, because they love to crawl into sleeping bags. So that's a bit frightening for the people involved.
Daniel left the hospital with a clean bill of health, still totally convinced it was a death adder and not a python. While he has no physical after effects from the ordeal, Daniel's worst animal nightmare has never stopped. So many nights his dreams turn to horror as he relives the worst night of his life over and over again. The night a deadly snake invaded his sleeping bag and wouldn't stop biting him until he ripped it off his face and threw it away. Could your worst animal nightmare be this? A fishing trip gone wrong, a river crossing in crocodile country. Kerry McLaughlin is swept off his feet by the surging current into the path of a massive predator.
There's a crocodile! Leave me! Dad! Get away!
At the top end of Australia is the East Alligator River system, the continent's #1 epicenter for its biggest predator, the saltwater crocodile. Nearly every body of water here is croc habitat, but rivers are the lifeblood of the environment and a major focus of activity, including human recreation. In March 1987, Kerry McLaughlin was making one of his regular fishing trips to the East Alligator River. His 17-year-old son Michael had grown up around Kakadu National Park, and both were wise to the life-threatening danger of sharing water with crocodiles. Kerry's wife Judy had helped them pack dozens of times before. It was a weekly ritual.
You'd have to say, respect us when you see us.
All right, have a good day, catch some fish.
Okay.
They counted themselves lucky to have such rich fishing grounds so close to home.
Okay, mate, we're off.
The plan was to cast out from the shore during the incoming tide, and then fish from their small boat when the tide changed. This time, their small boat will never make it to the water. Kerry had taught his son how to fish from a young age. This was special time they really enjoyed together.
The Northern Territory probably rates as the best crocodile country in Australia. The numbers are very large, although early on they were hunted almost to the brink of extinction, and are still listed as a threatened species because of that. Because the habitat is so prime, they've really recovered remarkably well. And the reason why there's more crocodiles in the Northern Territory than anywhere else, the big river systems, great nesting habitat. So lots of nests means lots of crocs.
The area today is well signposted with multilingual warnings because of the heavy concentration of large crocodiles competing for every source of prey. Even so, people still make themselves easy targets.
The East Alligator River is a huge river system, and it supports a large number of crocodiles, probably the largest that we know of in the country.
Everything they eat is ambushed, either in the river or at the water's edge.
Everything's fair game. If they can get hold of it, then they'll take it.
This is where the McLaughlins are headed. Big crocodiles swim against the current and hold steady at the crossing, grabbing fish on the incoming tide. A submerged concrete path causes fish to swim over the barrier, making the hunting even easier. Crocs can't eat underwater. They can't chew. They swallow their prey whole. If a fish is too big, they push it up the bank.
Crocodiles, when they're in the water and they want to maintain position in the water, they'll actually use their feet like paddles, like a canoeist. And they can line up against the current, and maybe it's just learned behaviour and the best possible way to capture the fish.
The McLaughlins' favourite spot is Cowles Crossing, where the river borders Aboriginal territory in Arnhem Land.
We were driving down the road, go to the petrol station, get petrol for the car, petrol for the boat, and then we head out. We went to the kiosk. I think my dad bought some drinks and a couple of packets of lures.
Next time, only one will return to the store in a terror-stricken panic.
How's going?
Not too bad.
Let's go, my dad.
Kerry McLaughlin had been in Kakadu for 11 years and claimed he could smell a crocodile coming by the odor of its breath. He was considered croc-wise.
My dad knew the area very well and knew not to trust the saltwater crocs.
Kerry had instilled everything he knew about croc awareness into his son, and they both knew how to behave when they were close to dangerous saltwater crocodiles.
The East Alligator River was the eastern boundary of the park, and that was all of my district responsibilities. The area of the river was about 90 kilometres inland from the mouth, and sort of a tidal flow up to that point, and about 3 kilometres from Carl's Crossing. So you had this experience at the crossing where there was always the sound of water, and there's only one point in the tide when it was quiet, and that was when it ebbed. It came in, up over the crossing, went 3 kilometres upstream, and then stopped, and it's like somebody pulled the plug out the end of the thing and it sucked the water back out. And it was an extremely dynamic area because the natural barrier that they built the crossing on, the water would well up there and it would dam up. At that natural barrier, it was like a maelstrom of activity, and anything that was there to eat anything else congregated at that point. And that's where we saw the highest ratio of crocodile populations in the whole of the Kakadu there. We used to do monthly surveys, so we knew there was in excess of 300 animals in a 10-kilometre stretch of that river, at all different size classes and some quite big ones there. But the crossing used to have people fishing, because not only was it good for the crocodiles and any other predator, it was good fishing, because that's where all the barramundi were. And obviously crocodiles would come up and somebody would yell out croc, and then literally people would just part, and then they'd go back and keep fishing. And other times we'd go down at night time just on patrol or something, and you'd be shining a spotlight around as you do, and you'd see red eye, red eye, red eye, and then you'd see somebody standing up to their thigh in water fishing, and you just say, you know. And so yes, there was a general acceptance that they were there, there was a general thing, but I think there was that psyche that, oh, it won't happen to me. We used to have an old crocodile that was about a 14-foot crocodile, and he was colloquially known as Eric. His territory was in and around the crossing. Eric had a few stories around Eric coming up to attack a dog. There were some humorous stories about, you know, people frolicking in the water and then Eric surfacing between them and then actually standing on him to get out of the water in terror. There was a general, yeah, we know they're there, but it's all right, you know.
Everyone had a comfort zone around Eric, but the hierarchy in the river was about to change.
Eric had a fight with another large crocodile. He went down and there was, you know, mother of all fights taking place between Eric and this very large dark crocodile. It was quite a classic territorial fight. Basically, Eric got beaten up and he was sent to Coventry somewhere, and we never did see him again, either in surveys or anywhere else. We don't quite know what ever happened to him.
The battle for territory around Carl's Crossing was ending. A new dominant male was taking over.
That occurred around about 3 days before the incident that took place at the crossing, and we think it was the same crocodile that usurped him that then subsequently attacked Kerry McLaughlin.
A news camera captured this vision of the new king of Carl's Crossing only days before the attack. They were after Australia's legendary sports fish, the barramundi, prized for its gourmet qualities and considered a great fighting fish. This is one that got away, but the river was full of great fish, and it wouldn't take long to get another.
Every time.
It was a friendly competition between father and son to see who would end up with the biggest catch.
Oh, yep, Dad, I'm on.
Barramundi is also a favorite food for crocodiles.
It's huge.
The fishing action would stir up the crocs and raise their instincts to a high pitch. Often they would have easy pickings, taking the fisherman's prize off the line before they could reel it in.
Check it out, Dad.
Yeah.
Tide was still on the way in when a four-wheel drive arrived at the other side of the crossing.
I don't think they're going to cross here because it's stupid.
Kerry knew instantly they wouldn't make it if they tried to cross on the rising tide.
This four-wheel drive pulled up over the other side because we were on one side and the four-wheel drive came from the other side, and he was going to cross, and my dad's trying to tell him not to.
Boy! You can't cross here!
The surging water drowns out any words of advice.
It's too fast, you can't cross here!
They know it's deep, but they're confident they can cross. They'll take their chances, all the while oblivious to the McLaughlin's calls. With the water too high and the force of the incoming tide, there's every chance the vehicle will be swept away. Kerry feels he has to do something.
I can't hear me. I'm going to have to go over and tell him.
Every minute the crossing is getting deeper. Kerry knows he has to get over and back before it's too late. He thinks this will only take a minute. Downriver, the new king of Cowes Crossing is on the bank sunning himself, very aware of what's going on.
Crocodiles are ambush predators. They rely on not being detected. And so when you're in shallow water, then it's fairly safe, as long as there's a large distance between you and the open water. Because the crocodile has no way of sneaking up and taking you.
Within a few steps, Kerry is waist deep, and the big croc changes position to keep an eye on what's going on in his domain. It's near the top of the tide, and the visitors start to prepare the vehicle for a deep water crossing.
It was high tide, it was up to near his chest.
Thinking nothing of the hazardous trip across the river, Kerry even takes his fishing rod and beer with him. But now he's entered the crocodile's domain, and hungry eyes are watching, waiting. The predator is in a prime position to slip silently into the water should the scenario change, and the odds swing in his favor. The visitors are oblivious to the drama that is unfolding around them.
No, mate, no.
I wouldn't cross here, boys. It's too deep. The current's too strong. I was lucky to get across myself. What's been up to? A bit of fishing.
He made it across, talked to the bloke in the four-wheel drive, then he started coming back.
I wouldn't advise it. It's too deep. Current's pretty strong.
Right.
There's another track about 5k down the road. I'd give that a whirl.
Thanks for the advice.
Kerry's Good Samaritan deed has probably saved their vehicle, but has now put his own life in jeopardy. In the precious minutes that he has taken to deliver his warning, the river has risen even higher and the current even faster. The visitors heed the advice and leave. But for Kerry, the odds are stacking up against him. Many eyes will now be watching. The trip back is to prove an even bigger challenge. At the same time, a group of American tourists arrive on a sightseeing expedition of Kakadu National Park. Australia's biggest predators are a significant tourist attraction, and Cowes Crossing is a perfect location to see a large number of big animals living in the wild. But they're not prepared for the horror they're about to see.
Mr. McLaughlin walked across the causeway. The animal was downstream on a bank, would have observed that, and would have seen this pattern of somebody walking across.
But the croc knows Kerry is out of range, unless something happens to swing the odds. The Americans are confused to see a large croc on the bank and a man in the water.
I think he was walking on the part he was meant to be walking on and walking across, and somehow the current hit him too hard in one spot and he stumbled down a bit and then stepped on some slime because it was really slimy near the rocks.
The odds are about to turn in the crocodile's favor. Deeper water, stronger current, and slippery rocks, a recipe for disaster.
The fact that he slipped and then went into deeper water meant that game on.
The splash is the crocodile's cue. Kerry is now easy prey.
And as soon as he slipped, that was it. The croc was straight in that water.
Silently, the chase begins.
You right, Dad?
At first, it appeared Kerry would easily be able to swim to shore, but the crocodile was closing in.
Dad, there's a crocodile! What? Dad, get out of the water!
Animals fall into the water all the time, and they struggle as they try to get back to the bank. In this case here, it would have recognised the animal that should be on land, was now in the water, and easy pickings.
Watching from the bank, there was nothing Kerry's son could do except try to distract the predator with rocks. The tourists watched in horror.
The victim's son started throwing rocks at the croc.
But rocks hitting its steel-like head were not enough to deter this dinosaur from its path.
This didn't deter the crocodile.
The gap closes.
Crocodiles have superb vision, and they'll use that, of course, to locate their prey. But if the animal submerges and goes underwater, they still have the ability to capture it because they've got these pressure sensors on their jaws, which will be able to detect small movements in the water, and so they'll be able to grab the prey underwater as well. But while it's on the surface, why not use eyesight?
Kerry's feet finally touch firm ground, giving him the leverage to use his fishing rod to strike his attacker. His beer is his final token of defiance. But tragically, Kerry McLaughlin's river crossing is nearly over.
So I took a couple of pictures of it as it was happening. I just couldn't believe what was going on.
That course like that.
Oh no! You got him!
In a split second, it was all over.
Dad!
Graphic photos of the horror tell the tale.
In this case, the body is large, and the crocodile would be wanting to take it back to where its territory is held, and most likely into an area where it can secret the body away and wait for it to decompose, and then for it to feed upon later on.
Michael had made a last-minute dash to get to his dad.
Where are you, Dad?
They seen the whole attack. It was just horrifying for them to see that. They were really shocked. And one of them gave me a pair of binoculars to look out, and all I could see was a hat floating down the river.
Authorities needed to be alerted. The news had to be broken to his mum.
And then I ran up to the supermarket there.
In 1987, there were no cell phones in the Australian outback, so Michael had to run to the local store to raise the alarm. In the meantime, the King of Cows crossing made off with its prize down the East Alligator River.
Said, look, my old man's just been taken by a croc.
The croc's got my dad. I need to call my mum, and I need to call the police.
The story was so horrific, it was hard for anyone to believe.
Well, they rang the police and the ranger. Then I rang my mum. She thought I was joking. And I said, I'm not joking. I'm serious.
Leave me, Mum. What did he...
The hunt for the killer crocodile continued around Carl's Crossing. 6 Kakadu Park rangers checked the foreshore around the East Alligator River. Another search by boat was ordered by Chief Ranger Clive Cook.
Guns were loaded. The hunt was on. But the croc had a good head start, and it was a big river. The mission at this stage was to recover the victim, dead or alive, and no one was quite sure what to expect. For Clive Cook, it would be an encounter that would change his life forever.
We motored up, of course, not knowing what to expect, not knowing whether we'd seen somebody injured or something else.
Working only on sketchy details, the Rangers were not sure if Kerry McLaughlin was still alive. The reports they received were wild and conflicting, emotionally charged.
It would have been probably just nearly a kilometre downstream that we first saw it, and we couldn't quite make out what it was. As we got a bit closer, and it was the torso of Kerry. The crocodile was pushing up to the bank, was trying to push it up the bank. I said to the guy, see if we can get closer to it, and I'll whack the crocodile and let the oars and let go of the remains, you see.
A dangerous maneuver in a vulnerable boat.
Now, I had to go at it, and the crocodile wouldn't let go of the remains. So we backed off again. The crocodile got savvy then that we were actually after it, and then he was being swept downstream, we were being swept downstream, and every now and again he'd pop up.
2 men in a boat were no threat to the croc. He was not intimidated by anything.
At that stage I said, right, there's only one thing before I'm going to shoot it. So I got the 308 and lined it up, and as it popped up to the surface I fired a shot at it. I'm not sure whether I hit it, but it just went down there. What happened after that, it was just like cat and mouse, because then the crocodile would pop up, or was forced up to the surface, would see us around and then submerge again, and then we'd come up and he'd surface, and it's this like this.
The crocodile was obviously having trouble staying submerged in the turbulent current and the neutral buoyancy of the body.
Then I woke up to the fact that this is stupid. What I need to do is get over the top of him, turn around and just hold the boat against the current, let the crocodile come to us. So we just held the boat literally in gear, just holding it against the current. And I was like, where is he?
The plan worked. He surfaced right on cue.
By me, he just surfaced literally a few metres in front of the boat. Just boom, there he was. It was just instantaneous. There was this huge spray of water. And all that we saw was Kerry's remains just drifting past the boat. And it was almost at that same time, the other patrol boat had arrived and came roaring around the corner, and it was our bigger patrol boat. And I just had enough time to yell out to them, look, guys, grab that thing before it sinks or the crocodile comes back. They swung the boat round upstream, pulled up alongside carry his remains, and reached over and pulled him inboard. And then they just wrapped him up in a tarp that they had on the boat. We hung around to see if we could see the crocodile, but we never saw it again, ever.
Clive Cook's life in Kakadu would never be the same again. Controversy would surround the circumstances of the shooting forever. Some people feeling the ranger purposely missed the croc so it could escape, while others thought it shouldn't have been shot at all. Ranger Cook was caught in the crossfire.
A few nights afterwards, I remember waking up just shivering and it's just delayed. I think it was post-traumatic, you know, and you just sort of think, oh, well. And woke up the dead of night, it all, because you must have been working on flat out adrenaline, just dealing with it at the time. And it was only afterwards that you suddenly realised what you just saw.
Last night, Mr McLaughlin's remains were brought back to Darwin Mortuary. He'd lived at Jabiru for 11 years, working at the Ranger uranium mine. His wife, Judy, is under sedation. At first light today, Kakadu rangers began searching for what they initially believed would be the crocodile's carcass. But as the search continued, the hunters decided the reptile was probably alive but wounded. This afternoon, more than 35 kilometres of the river had been searched with no trace of the croc or other remains of Mr McLaughlin.
If they had shot the animal and killed it, then it would have come to the surface at some point in time as it decomposed. So in this case, it appears that the animal got away, which I think is actually a good thing. It was only doing what a crocodile is meant to do, and that is to feed.
For Kerry McLaughlin, who lost his life, for everyone who witnessed the gruesome attack, his son Michael, the American tourists, the park rangers, and the McLaughlin family. This was their worst animal nightmare.
The hype around recent fatalities around crocodiles sort of had this perverse logic around it when people came to see the site. But people were still fishing it. Literally, next day they were still fishing in the river. And there was a cultural paradigm to this as well. Aboriginal guys felt that it was pretty bad that I'd shot the animal, wasn't really his fault. And this fact that there's dead body, and there's a spiritual thing associated with that as well. So it's become embedded in that now, that all those crocodiles, there's a bit of that person there. And so, in a sense, it's a legacy, you know, that will live on.
The horrific events of March 17, 1987 still resound throughout the North. The story is retold to this day, and local Aborigines believe Kerry McLaughlin's spirit lives on in every crocodile in the East Alligator River. At Cowles Crossing, the warning signs have been increased, but people still dismiss the danger. Crocodiles still wait for any prey that may stumble in their path. And the crocodile that killed Kerry McLaughlin has never been seen again.